Welsh rugby depth chart for 2024, folks. It was a pretty forgettable year for Wales, having not managed to pick up any wins. But is this the potential first block in a set which is building towards a Rugby World Cup and a squad on the recovery? Let's look through Warren Gatland's team throughout that terrible 2024 season to see which players have been getting used, just how young is the squad, which positions are looking a little bit light, which are looking a bit more secure. And you guys can let us know your thoughts on if Gats is going to get it right or you think they're going to go further down the gurgler. His future seems secure at least until the Six Nations in 2025. It is a new year for Wales, so hopefully some improved results. We've had a look at some of the other teams as well. South Africa, Ireland, New Zealand, all the way down to Italy thus far. So if you want to compare how the different coaches are doing things, feel free to check out those videos. Some of the coaches lean more towards consistency, the likes of Andy Farrell with Ireland. Some of the coaches like Fabien Galtier are more in the kind of rotation camp, and everywhere in between. We'll see how Wales slot into things just now. Let's look at jerseys 1, 2, and 3. And you can see only the loose head prop, and that's Gareth Thomas there in red, is a front rower who gets like the lion's share of the game time. Hooker and tight head prop, there's not one guy who gets half or more the game time. So Gareth Thomas there, that red block in number 1. He's been pretty ever-present for Wales this year. For any prop to be getting 60+% of the game time this year has been impressive, because the props these days tend to be taken off relatively early on in the second half. So to get 60% of the game time, you basically need to play most of the games, or you need to be a prop who plays pretty deep into the minutes, getting substituted in the last 10 or whatnot. So Gareth Thomas has been very reliable for Gats in 2024. Nicky Smith is the chunk there in white, followed by Domachowski and Matthias. So you're very reliant on Gareth Thomas. He is kind of one of the more senior guys in the squad. Nicky Smith's obviously had a bit of a return to the squad. He's kind of been in and out over the last few years. But it is the most stable looking of their 3 front row jerseys. Number 2, Dewey Lake is there as the kind of main guy used in hooker. Now he's injured at the moment. He's not going to be available, at least for the start of the Six Nations 2025. So it'll be upon somebody else to have a crack at the start of the next year, which is unfortunate for Lake. I think he's had a little bit of time injured, and that's true of many of the guys. Daffy Jenkins, Adam Baird, other guys as well have been injured throughout this 2024 season. But Lake's unavailability for the start of 2025 is unfortunate. He's followed by Elliot D, who's had around about a third of the game time, followed by Ryan Elias. He's like the most commented guy from Welsh fans on this channel, who say things like he must have incriminating photos of Gats because he keeps getting picked. But Ryan Elias is still there in that grey chunk with around about a fifth of the game time. And then Evan Lloyd, the 23-year-old, he is there with that kind of sliver of game time there at the top. So I don't think that looks too unhealthy in terms of the guys being chosen. Like, there's not one guy who, if he was injured, you would say, in terms of like just pure depth chart, like that's 80% of the game time kind of down the drain kind of thing. So like back when Ken Owens was playing, he would usually dominate a lot more of the minutes. So it's a relatively even split is the one thing I'm saying. Tight head prop is again a real mix. Kieran Asarati is there in the red chunk. He's your leading candidate for tight head with almost 40% of the game time, followed by Archie Griffin, just over a third, followed by Dylan Lewis, Harry O'Connor, and then even a little bit of Leon Brown is that slice there in blue. I'm not sure at the moment if Wales have really got that big, reliable tight head. Like a lot of nations have got, like a Franz Malherbe for South Africa, like a Tyg Furlong for Ireland, Tyrell Lomax for the All Blacks, Xander Fagerson for Scotland. I don't feel like you guys have got that at the moment. You could use one of those. A big old tight head who just scrums the house down, doesn't give away any penalties. So that'd be certainly on Gats' wish list for 2025 if he's got one. The locks have also seen a number of different players used, and it's such a weird one looking at this Welsh squad because so many of the big name guys have retired in recent years. No Alan Wyn-Jones, there's no Justin Tipuric, there's no Jonathan Davis. There is George North, but he's retired since, so a lot of these guys of old have kind of left the picture. So it means Daffy Jenkins is that guy in the number 4 jersey who has the biggest slice, but even that's just over a third of the game time. He's had injuries, which is unfortunate. I felt sorry for him as he captained the side through the Six Nations, loss after loss, having to do kind of post-match interviews. He's only a very young man, like 22 years old. Like a heck of a responsibility. Hopefully he comes back stronger in 2025. Chiunza is there as the white chunk in the number 4 jersey. They've used him a lot more as a lock than a loose forward in this year just gone. Adam Baird is there in the grey chunk. So those 3 guys are certainly the main guys chosen. And then a bunch of guys like from black, blue, yellow, green, and brown. It's like Matthew Screech, Ratty, Hill, Teddy Williams, and then Freddie Thomas as well. So there's been a bunch of guys who've had nominal game time, but it's largely been Jenkins, Chiunza, and Baird. And then on the other side, Will Rowlands is your main chunk there, number 5. He is another one of those kind of more senior guys. And then Adam Baird is also the white chunk on that side as well. So Adam Baird features kind of on behind different props when he's locking the scrum. Dafydd Jenkins is also there as the grey chunk in the number 5. And then other guys who've had a chance, Ben Carter, Freddie Thomas, Chiunza is there again, and then Corey Hill is there again. So between Will Rowlands, Dafydd Jenkins, Adam Baird, and Chris Chiunza, that's the vast majority of the minutes. Ben Carter, I forget if he spent much time injured, but I know Gats was kind of singing his praises as going to be the next big thing not too long ago, but he's had kind of really limited opportunities in 2024. The back row, number 6, for a lot of teams I've noticed, is the most kind of rotated jersey. It's also one that when there's cards often gets kind of sacrificed if a front row has got a card. So it's a hard one to kind of peg down. And Wales is certainly no different. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, was 8 guys. Yeah, whether they've started there or they've been shifted there during the games, a lot of guys who've been there. James Botham, with not even a third of the game time, as the leading number 6 for Wales, followed by Alex Mann, Tane Plumtree, who's had a kind of meteoric rise. He's certainly got the favour of Gats. He's been really thrust into the spotlight. Jenkins is also there on the blind side. Mackenzie Martin, Tommy Reffel, Chiunza, Basham there as well, with those kind of almost inconsequential numbers. But yeah, between both of them, Alex Mann and Tane Plumtree, those are your main 3 blindside flankers. And then 7 is the one where you feel like Wales, even at this time, when they're at a bit of a low point, still seem really blessed with good open side flankers. Like Tommy Reffel is one of the few guys, kind of like Gareth Thomas, who really secured his position with like 2/3 of the game time. That's, I guess, pretty pleasing. Jack Morgan is there in white behind him. He obviously spent a lot of the year injured, otherwise Tommy Reffel probably doesn't get as much of that game time. But if Reffel's playing or if Jack Morgan's playing, you've got a bloody good player playing at open side. Blindside's been a bit more of a revolving door. James Botham also appears as the grey chunk on the open side as well. Likewise, Alex Mann in that kind of black chunk. But between Reffel and Morgan, I feel like you guys are pretty covered for quite some time, because both those guys are still at a good age. They're both performing at a good performance level. They've both got great skill sets. Yeah, I think you'd be pretty happy with 7. You couldn't say that about every position, but 7 I feel like is pretty well stacked. And then number 8, Aaron Wainwright. Of all the forwards, he gets the most game time in any one position. With I make it out to be 77% of all the minutes for number 8 this year went to Aaron Wainwright, followed by Plumtree and then James Botham as well. So James Botham has been a bit of a jack of all trades in that back row this year, but Wainwright has been the guy to displace at number 8. And it's another one where you guys, I mean, like in the past, it would have been Faletau, wouldn't it? So not just Faletau, but he would have been in the mix. Yeah, Wainwright's been, I think he's in pretty decent form. So he's often been one of the better players on the Welsh pitch. You guys have always got good back rows, if nothing else. The back line is also one which sees a few positions a little bit revolving door. Number 9, Thomas Williams is your leading candidate there, but even he doesn't have half the game time just yet. He's followed by Alice Bevan. So that's your main 2 guys. And then sadly, that grey chunk is Gareth Davis, who's since retired from international rugby. So if you're looking at building towards a World Cup, any investment in him, kind of game time wise, is kind of off the table now. Kieran Hardy and Rodri Williams are the other 2 guys in the black and the blue chunks. But I don't know. I think Thomas Williams, you got a good player in him as he's your starting 9. And then 10, I think is more of a problem than 9. I think 9 is fine. 10, Wales don't have a world-class 10 at the moment. Like, it's such a strange one. Like, back in the days, you guys had Patchell, who could barely get a game at times. You had Anscombe, and you had Bigger. You had 3 really good 10s to choose from. Now you've got Sam Costello as the main guy at 10. And that's a bit troubling because he's not that good. Like, he's solid, probably at best. I don't mean to put down on players. Like, any of these guys who make international teams are exceptional rugby players. But if you're listing like each country's best 10, Sam Costello's he's pretty far down the pecking order. He's followed by Ben Thomas, who got a couple of starts against Australia. He's that chunk in white. I mean, he plays a bit more 12, doesn't he, than 10. So he's the second choice guy. Yohan Lloyd is there as the grey chunk. I quite like Yohan Lloyd, although he's a little bit of a live wire at times, sometimes a little bit unpredictable. I don't know if he's the guy that you'd want the mortgage on if he was kind of lining up a shot at goal or some kind of clutch play. If you had the mortgage on it with 5 minutes to go. And then Gareth Anscombe is still there playing international rugby. He's there at that black chunk, but he is obviously at the kind of senior end of his career. You've also had Jacob Beetham, I think, got 10 minutes, and then Kai Evans got 1. So almost pretty much invisible on the chart. But Costello, Thomas, Lloyd, Anscombe. Don't know that the answer has been found just yet there. I mean, maybe Anscombe, the way he's been playing in the Premiership, is the leading guy, but they prefer the guys who play for the URC teams because they can kind of manage them a bit better. But 10 you feel like is a little bit of a concerning one. That being said, like, I often compare this Welsh team to the Australian team because both the coaches are in similar positions, having to overhaul the squad from a difficult place. Both squads are pretty young. Neither squad has a fantastic 10, but the Aussies have been ploughing on with Noah Lolosio, and he has seemed to slightly been tracking in the right direction. So it might be, if you keep investing the minutes into Costello, that he just picks up his game. It's not unheard of, but it just hasn't happened in 2024. But again, much of what a backline player is allowed to do is based on what's happening up front as well. We need to keep that in mind. The midfield, Nick Tompkins is your main guy there in 12, but even he's only got around about a third of the game time, followed by Mason Grady. Ben Thomas, as I mentioned, playing 12 and 10. Owen Watkin and Eddie James, who's only really appeared from the bench. He's never really been trusted with a full start just yet. So that one is also, there's no one guy who's made the 12 jersey his own. Obviously, Nick Tompkins was the favourite for a long time, but he's kind of been a bit in and out. And then 13, Owen Watkin. George North, who's obviously retired, so that white chunk with around about a quarter of the game time. Again, if you're investing for the future, that game time is gone. Max Llewellyn is there in grey. Joe Roberts, Mason Grady, and then Eddie James. Again, a few kind of token minutes from the bench. So the midfield does look unsettled. Long gone are the days where it was like a settled midfield pairing of like either North and Tompkins, or Jonathan Davis and North, or whoever else it was. Big Jamie Roberts. So many positions you just look that haven't been filled by a person who's kind of stepped up to the big shoes of those kind of predecessors that they are following behind. So, I mean, I do like Mason Grady and Max Llewellyn, maybe, going forward. But, again, guys who need more game time and need to be able to step up. Be nice to get a few wins to get some confidence. Left wing is remarkably stable. Rio Dyer there has been really trusted by Gats this year. He's got a huge chunk. He's certainly one of the more played guys in one position. Blair Murray has been one of the debutants who's looked pretty sharp towards the end of the year when he's become Welsh qualified. He's there in that white chunk. And then Josh Adams in the grey chunk has spent a bit of time on the left wing. And then Josh Adams is also the main guy on the right wing with around about a third of the game time. Then there's a whole bunch of guys who get a chance. Liam Williams there in white. Josh Hathaway in grey. Rio Dyer's there in black. Mason Grady. Tom Rogers, Sam Costello, that game he came on to the right wing when he wasn't really supposed to, Max Llewellyn, Ellis Bevan. So you got a 9 and a 10 there on the right wing. We could probably discount those minutes as irrelevant because those are guys filling in when there was an injury and a 6-2 split and guys having to cover in a pinch, but I've left them on there. And then fullback. Look at that magnificent chunk of Cam Winnett and that red chunk at fullback. He's there with like 80% of the game time. That's very consistent. Now he's like, at the moment, he's still a very young man. He's not like a Lee Halfpenny. He's not a Liam Williams. But he's been really consistent. And it's hard, again, to stand out that much on a team which has lost literally every game of the year. But I don't think he's looked bad, which in a bad year makes him kind of good in my mind. So he's been just quietly solid there at fullback. He's not the biggest dude, but I think he's been pretty consistent. Blair Murray is the white chunk there. Liam Williams, Josh Hathaway and Yohan Lloyd have also had a few minutes there as well. But yeah, it's largely been the Cam Winnett show. So it is a very young side. I should say, with these games of 2024, I'm not including that non-test match against the Reds, the final game of that Aussie tour, because that was a non-test match. So yeah, overall, you look at the Welsh squad, there's a lot of positions which still don't seem to have a kind of front runner. So far, you got Gareth Thomas, Tommy Reffel, but again, his chunk is probably smaller at number 7, if not for Jack Morgan being injured as much as he was. Aaron Wainwright, Rio Dyer, and Cam Winnett. Pretty much every other position, the leading guy in his position has not had even half the game time. Like, you would like the leading guy to have at least half. Your second guy to have maybe 30%, your third guy to have 20%. Nice mix. So everyone's had a chance, but your leading guy is still your leading guy. You build the cohesion between the guys. It's hard to get cohesion when you've had as many changes as Wales have had. Again, some of that's injury enforced, some of that's rotation, some of that's trying to find combinations. There's been a multitude of reasons. But we do need to keep in mind the squad is young. By my mark, it is the second youngest of the Tier 1 squads we've been looking at. Only Italy is younger, and they're not much younger. Australia is a similar age. That's why I keep comparing this squad to the Aussie squad, because the same arguments that get levelled at this Welsh squad, they don't have the cattle, has been said about the Aussies for a long time. And both these squads, especially at the start of the year, not in great positions. I mean, the Aussies are probably even worse after the Eddie Jones debacle, but we have seen a little bit of the spark coming into the Wallabies squad. We probably haven't seen enough of that from this Welsh squad, but yeah, very similar ages. Also a very lightweight squad. Only the Italians are a lighter pack. Pack weights, you've got to take them a little bit with a grain of salt because the weights change, but if we can take it as a general marker, like the French are the heaviest pack, the Boks are a heavy pack, the All Blacks are a heavy pack. Wales is not a heavy pack. Like they're pretty decently heavier than the Italians. The only other squad that's younger than them as well, but it's not a real massive pack. So it has been, true that the squad has been bullied around at times from some bigger squads, but they've also had to use a lot of players. Like they've used, by my count, 56 players in 2024, which is only behind Scotland, who used 60, and France, who used 75. And I remember France toured Argentina and took basically an entirely different team from the Six Nations squad. So their numbers are boosted. And Scotland likewise did a very similar thing, not to the same degree, but similar with their tour of the North of the Americas, I think North and South. So 60 players for the Scots. Wales didn't really have that kind of game where they needed to just travel with a B squad. They had injuries throughout the year, obviously. So they enforced a bit of rotation. They had some retirements again. But 56 players, I think, highlights the lack of stability we've had in 2024. Like, there's more stable squads like Italy, Ireland, New Zealand, England are all in the low 40s. Not that much chopping and changing, whereas a lot of chopping and changing from Wales. The most selected 15 this year from Gats has been Gareth Thomas, Dewi Lake, and Kieran Asarati. Thomas is the only guy in his 30s of those three. Remember, Lake won't be available for the start of next year. Jenkins and Rowlands, that's a real mix of the age scale, a 33-year-old and a 22-year-old. Jenkins is only going to get better. He's a good player. Botham at 6, Reffel at 7, and Wainwright at 8. All these guys are in their mid-20s. So that's going to get better. Like, Wainwright's a well-established international, and I think he's looked the part this year. And he's only 27, so he is going to get better. Reffel's cracking. He's only 25. Williams, that's Thomas Williams, and Sam Costello, 9-10. I rate Thomas Williams, as I said, but I think he needs a better guy playing next to him, or Sam Costello, who is only 23, needs to take it up a gear in another year of his career. So, as I said, some guys are late bloomers. It's maybe hard. We focus too much on the 10s, but yeah, it still sticks out a bit like a sore thumb at times. Tompkins and Watkin is the midfield again. Both those guys are still in their 20s well, albeit late 20s. Rio Dyer left wing, Josh Adams right wing, and Cam Winnett, who's still only 21 at fullback. So, yeah, I don't think that's a squad. If it's something similar to that, it's going to go ahead and compete for a Six Nations title. But I don't think it's all doom and gloom. They're really young. They need a bit of stability. Hopefully some guys can stay fit throughout the course of the year. Gats can build some cohesion between these players, and they can kick it up a notch. I'm choosing to be optimistic. I've been a bit down on Wales at times this year. I'm not even Welsh, but yeah, people were writing the Wallabies off after the Eddie Jones debacle and the way Wales flogged them at the World Cup and whatnot. And Schmidt hasn't got them humming just yet, but he's showed signs of what can be done. We need Gats to do something similar, but he's needing to pull finger soon, because you feel like if the results don't come in the Six Nations, it could get pretty messy. But there you go. That's the Welsh depth chart. I hope you guys found it interesting. Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I'd appreciate it. A fair bit of work goes into these depth charts, but I always find them fascinating to have a look at. As I said, I'll chuck a playlist up there of all the other ones. The South African one has been an interesting one because they mixed it up in terms of their rotation. Razor, his first year in charge of the All Blacks, blooded quite a few new young guys. And yeah, the French basically changed their whole squad for the middle of the year. So check those out as well. But you guys let us know your thoughts. I hope you're enjoying the new year, and hopefully it is a better year for the Welsh team in 2025. You guys take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.